alley alleyways in DC and the history of them and how they actually had their own communities early on. They're not that many anymore, but it has a very interesting history. And she wrote a book about it. It was actually published by Georgetown. Um, and I think it's a very interesting way of learning about another slice of the history of Washington. So I encourage you all to come. She's very good. I also am very biased because she lives across the literally lawn from me and babysat for my kids. So I've known her for a long while, but she's a real pro. So I encourage you to join us, and something will go out before then.
Yes, I can tell you that I read the book, and it's most interesting, and not only tells you, I mean, when you realize these alleys really were part of the intention of the planners of this city, and they carried really a very active function in a lot of areas of city life. You'll be surprised when you read it, but it's for real. And it's also easy reading.
With a lot of pictures.
Yes.
So she has a PowerPoint that she's used speaking lots of places. She actually spoke at Politics and Prose.
Dare we mention that bookstore? Okay, next. I want to thank Sue Boley for all that she's done for our group for years and years and years, and she's so organized. So thank you, Sue. Sue has announced that she is going to retire from that job, and so we do need somebody to take that task over. It really means just maintaining the biography, you know, and keeping up the roster. These are the main tasks. Keeping up the roster so it's up to date and we have emails and telephone numbers, and also keeping track of who would be due for the next term, the next sessions, you know, the next year. So think about it. This is like what happened when they needed a moderator. They said, think about it. No, but everybody put their head down.
Head down.
It was a live meeting and it's like you don't want the professor to call on you. Everybody's head went down. All right, that was that. Okay. Any announcements from anybody? No? Okay. I am going to mute you all and except Marge. You can unmute yourself, and Kathleen,
I'm unmuted, I
unmute
think.
yourself. And I'm
Kathleen.
the program over to Marge. It's all yours.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm very thrilled that Kathleen McGuiness, who will be speaking to you, is a wonderful neighbor of a few of us right in our building. And she is a force to reckon with in this Friendship Heights and Chevy Chase community. And I would give you, she's a certified dementia practitioner, certified end-of-life expert, certified home safety expert, and a seasoned care navigator dedicated to helping individuals and families navigate the complexities of aging in place or a healthcare crisis. And she was also just named commissioner on the Montgomery County Commission of Aging. So you would think that we would be talking about that, but we're not, because she is an avid explorer, hiker, and traveler. She took her first trip around the world at age 21, and in the last 20 years has been ticking off her bucket list. She was an expert scuba diver for the government of the Cayman Islands, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa at 19,400 feet, and completed multiple solo skydives in California. Last year, she was invited to Saudi Arabia by Prince Turki as his guest for 10 days to tour the new Saudi Arabia and observe the progress in women's rights and tourism. So what you all decided you would like to hear from her is about walking the El Camino trail, which is very famous in Europe. And I can just say that I just came back from 2 weeks in France and going on the Seine from Paris to Normandy and then to Brittany. And there are some walks that are along that way. So anyway, I'm turning it over to, or if I can find you, to Kathleen.
Thanks, Marge.
Oh, there she is.
There I am. Nice to see everyone today. Marge, thank you for asking me. It's been a while since I did this presentation, and every time I do it, I think, oh God, I'd love to do that again. So maybe I will. So let me see if I can, let me share my screen, get the PowerPoint up here, share. What am I looking at? 1 second. Get that down. Camino. Hold on. Okay. Can we see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to slideshow from the beginning. Okay. Got it?
Yeah.
Is that full screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, great. For those of you who don't know, the El Camino Santiago pilgrimage is a 500 plus foot journey. And I'll tell you more about it on the way as we go along. But where do I start? Never know where to start on this one. Anyways, so it is the journey that I took was my amazing journey along, starting in the French Pyrenees and walking through to Santiago, Spain. So this I put up here so that I can remember. As Marge mentioned, I'm currently serving as a commissioner on the Commission on Aging for Montgomery County. And I just want to let you all know there is an aging forum with lots of great information that will take place on May 21st from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. In case anybody's interested, caring for a loved one, or just wants to know more about the excellent resources, many of them free in Montgomery County. I also do speaking engagements pretty much all over town. My latest one is online dating after 65 that I've been doing lately. And I can tell you there's no more humbling experience than getting naked in front of a stranger at age 69. After my husband died, I braved out online dating, and it was fabulous. So let's go back to the Way of St. James, the French way on the Camino. So this is where I began my journey, and you can feel free. I can't see everybody, but I assume somebody will let me know if you have a question. So it began from Washington, D.C. to Paris, up here. And then we took a train down to Bordeaux, where we changed trains. And then we took another train to Bayonne, and then there was supposed to be a bus transport to get to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, but it was Sunday, so there was no bus. So I was like, well, now what are we supposed to do? Well, we got a cab. And that was the beginning of many, many hiccups on this journey. But, I think that's what is so much of the fun and memory building for journeys like this is that not everything quite goes as planned. This trip certainly did not. So there was a lovely article about myself and my two children who ended up walking part of it with me in the Washington Post many moons ago, shortly after I did it. I don't even know how they got the story, but then I started doing presentations because so many people, especially women, wanted to know how they could do this journey. And I can tell you there were people in their 80s walking this trail with me. So the history on the way of St. James was that the remains of the Apostle St. James the Great, who was beheaded, are buried underneath the church, this enormous cathedral in Santiago, it's a stunning cathedral. And that is basically what everybody on that pilgrimage trail is headed to. It was the most remarkable thing because everybody had the same purpose in mind. We were all trying to get there one day at a time, one big fat blister on my feet at a time, etc. So it was really just an incredible experience. The most popular route is the French way, or the Camino Frances. And I chose that route because I was a woman over 60 by myself, and it has the most amount of albergues or little whatevers, hostels, you name it, places where you could stay. I could pretty much count on someplace every 7 to 8 miles or so where there was some place I would be able to stay. And the historical pilgrims' needs were met by a series of hospitals and hospices along the way. And you can see their ruins, lots and lots of them on this journey. So this is where the story really began for me, which was a year before in Kalispell, Montana. My 60-year-old girlfriend had decided that we were all going to a dudette ranch in Kalispell, and we were going to horseback ride and train on barrels for rodeos and go on a cattle drive. Now, mind you, I'm a Ritz-Carlton kind of girl, but I thought, oh, how fun. We'll get cute outfits and new boots. And I got a lot more than that. So I used to be an avid horseback rider as a young girl, teenage girls, early 20s, and occasionally over the years. But so day one in Kalispell, Montana, this is me on my horse. I should have known when they gave me a horse named Bob. Bob is my dreaded ex-husband. And I should have known we weren't going to get along. But in day 3, I ended up in the hospital with 3 fractured vertebrae and 1 burst vertebrae. And this cheerful man there looking at me is putting a body cast on me that I'm going to wear for the next 4 months. So previously I had been a runner, ran most every other morning and, 10 milers, the Army 10 miler, the marathon. I started doing all this stuff in my 40s. I guess one of my many midlife crises, but the next 8 days in this rehab in Kalispell was learning how to walk again, trying to adjust to this cast that they put on me. And it's still here. I don't know if you can see this. Here it is. So I had lots of autographs, and it went up to my neck. Whoop, where is it? There it is. But as they cut it down gradually, the last time he cut it down around month 3, I said, can you make it more like a bustier? I'm getting tired of wearing this thing. I need a little more pizzazz. So bless his heart, the ortho guy did. Luckily had a sense of humor. Anyways, I don't know if you all have seen the movie The Way. if you have not, I highly recommend it. This is Martin Sheen. And I saw this movie when I was home recovering in a hospital bed. And it usually doesn't work, so I'm not going to try and show it on the trailer. But Netflix, any of those, you can watch it. And it's about Martin Sheen. And this is the movie that inspired me. It's about a father who has a difficult relationship with his only son, and his son goes to walk the Camino, the way, and his son is killed. He falls off the side of a mountain the second day he's there. And the father decides to do this journey on his own, and he takes his son's ashes and sprinkles them along the way. He's totally unprepared for this journey, has not trained. I trained for months to be able to carry weight on my back, because everything that you own for me was in my backpack. And I'd broken my back a year before, so I wasn't sure what I was capable of. But I knew when I saw this movie, I thought, well, I'm never going to be a runner again. These people are telling me I may not be able to walk again. And I'd really like to prove them wrong. I'm Irish. We're very hard-headed. So that's what I decided. I decided when I saw this movie and was still in my body cast that I was going to try this journey. And as I said, I chose the French way in southern France. I broke my back May of 2012. And in May 23rd, we took off for this journey. Now, mind you, I take my children to tea Christmas every year at the Willard. It's something civilized we can all do where there's no drinking and they have to mind their manners and dress up. So they think it's torture, but I love it. So I told my children I was going to do this in May. This is December. And my son went, "Mom, you can't find your way out of a paper bag. How are you going to do that?" And I go, I don't know, but I'm learning, and I think I can. And bless his heart, he said, "Well, I'll go with you for the first 7 days and make sure you can carry your backpack. And if you have to get rid of weight, I'll carry it for you." So I thought, oh, thank God. I knew I did something right with that boy. At the time, he was about 29. And then, of course, my daughter was there with us, and she said, well, if he's going, I want to go. And then my daughter, who was about 22 at the time, my daughter and I like to fight. We consider it, I guess, a part-time sport. I don't know if any of you have daughters, but so I thought, well, great. I'll have 400 miles. She can go at the tail end of it, and I'll be so zen. It'll take us 3 days before we start to quibble with each other. So that worked beautifully. So off we go. So there are 5 trails: the French way, the Portuguese way, the Portuguese coastal way, the Northern way, English way, and there's also 5 lesser known trails. And what I found fascinating is that some people go for a week, and then they go home, and then they come back the next year, and they do the next forward week, and then they come back, and they do that for several years. I knew for me that if I didn't do it all at once, I wasn't going to come back. That was just the way I think. So who I was at that time was a mother, daughter, wife, business executive, and I was on a leave, healthcare leave, so that I could recover. And I was also caring for both my mother and my father, who were ill. The thought of 35 days on a trail with no phone sounded like bliss to me. So that's what I did. It was also, I will say, quite a spiritual experience for me. I'm not, I would say, an overly spiritual person, but my purpose on this journey was to listen to the universe. I was, at one of those turning points in my life, And I find that I listen best when I'm alone, I'm afraid, and I'm lost. And I was all of those things just about every other day on this journey. Plus, I had just had a life-changing experience, and I wanted to know what I was capable of. So I had no hotel reservations. Not, I only had one the first night that we arrived in our little French village. And believe it or not, it was a blizzard in May. And they told us you have to go up 9 miles up a mountain. And they told us we can't go up the mountain. That was the only damn place I had a reservation, prepaid, of course. And so annoyed I would not get my money back. And that meant we had to go around the mountain, which was a lot further, which is what I was trying to avoid the first day. Anyways, the Way of St. James has existed for over 1,000 years, and it was the most important Christian pilgrimage during medieval times. Considered one of the 3 pilgrimages on which all your sins could be forgiven, and a plenary indulgence is still granted for completion. You have to be interviewed. This is the only way I'm going to get in heaven, but this is my Compostello that the Pilgrim Office gives you after you have a little visit with them at the end, and there's other criteria you have to do, but I'm hanging on to mine. Back then, if you wore a scallop shell, and I still have my scallop shell right here, you put it on the back of your backpack, and it's just like a good luck talisman now. But back then, it would ward off thieves who would not attack a devoted pilgrim. And today, most everybody, still wears this little shell wherever you can, mostly on your backpack. So this little pilgrim office up here, where you can see the scallop shell, you go to the pilgrim office in St. John Pied de Port, and you check in, and you get a passport, which is a little booklet that looks like the size of a passport, and you have to get it stamped each night you stay, wherever you stay, to prove that you didn't take a bus or, I don't know. It's part of the Catholic guilt. You have to make sure that you stopped everywhere. And this is my son, Ryan. We're on the train, and he's already got his eyes closed because I'm taking pictures. He doesn't want me to take any more pictures of him. But and this is the little village, the streets there. It's just adorable. And this is basically my uniform for the next 35 days. So this is the village in the foothills of the French Pyrenees. It is a beautiful little town. It is very picturesque. It is May, so it's early spring. And off we go. Up here on the left-hand side of this is the Pilgrim Passport, where you get each albergue, hotel, wherever you stay, a stamp in it. And this arrow on this wall here, that is your signage. There's not much other signs. That's it. So if I happen to be talking to somebody and I miss that little yellow arrow, well, guess what? I end up going the wrong way. So I probably walked 600 miles, not 500. But I was just going by the basics. This little, see this baguette of bread here on the door of the monastery we're passing? I thought that was so cute. It was like the Spanish pea pod food delivery, but the baker, they would go leave that for the priest in the morning, and the priest opened up the door and grab his bread. I, who was always hungry, thought, if I steal that bread, then I'm never going to get my Compostela. So I was a very good person. I did not take it. This backpack here, you see these were 2 French people, and they have their socks, and she has her shirt, and that's your clothes dryer. It's, and I learned these things from people on the way. Who knew that you could put your socks on your backpack and let them dry in the sun? I would have never thought of it. The hotels were also set up for this because they would take your whole backpack and for €8, they'd throw it in the wash and fold it, and it would be in your room the next morning. So you could have everything you owned washed. So one thing that was special, and I think that's why I like doing this presentation, is I expected this to be a very challenging journey. It's a long way. And I thought, I'm going to ask my 5 long-term girlfriends, each one to write me a letter so that when I am down and out and I want to quit, I want to go home, I want my mother, I want whatever, I'm going to open up one of their letters. So the only time I ever read these letters is when I do this presentation, and they are just fabulous. So the first time I opened one of these letters, I was in a little town and I had shin splints, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to go home. But I decided to read one of these letters, turn it over to the universe for that night, wake up tomorrow and get some ice and see if I could recover. And I did. So the letters, I wanted my gal pals to tell me what were my 5 best qualities, what were my 5 worst qualities, so that I could think about changing them while I was on this journey. One of them told me I swore like a sailor and I should stop it. So I'm better. I'm not perfect about that one. So I'm really grateful that I have friends and that these cards and letters have sustained me through that journey, because there are so many people who did not make it. This were some meaningful people on the journey. This is my son in the upper right-hand side, and this is a man named David Heggie. He's from Australia, and he had tried to do this walk 3 years before. We'd never met him before that morning, and this was the very first morning that my son and I had started out. So David says, well, I know the way, so follow me. And I go like, great. This trip is looking up already. More about David's story in a minute. These 3 guys here, 2 of these guys, I met about 2 weeks into the journey. My son had left, gone back to America. I was by myself. I got lost. I was on mile 23 because I missed places where I could get off and stay. And these guys come in, 2 guys, Daba, who was a former monk, and we're walking into this little town and there's no place to stay. It's too late. It's sprinkling raining. And so the long and short of it is my son is gone for one lousy day, and I'm already shacking up with 2 men because it's the only room in town. So they could not have been nicer, but they had a triple and we went, okay. This journey, people were so nice. I would never have done that in the United States, but we're in the middle of the nowhere. I'm exhausted. And you know what? That's what I did. So I took a picture of the 3 of them. The one didn't stay. He kept walking. And I texted it to my girlfriend saying, if I'm dead, these are the men that killed me, because I have an active imagination. And they couldn't have been nicer. So here we go. Remember that man, David Heggie, I mentioned? This stream here, of course, it rained for the first 3 days. My son was not pleased because he did not buy new shoes like his mother told him to do and gave him money for. Honey, get new hiking boots. I will later, Mom. Well, he didn't. He had his sneakers. Needless to say, he ended up with blisters the entire size of the pad of his foot. So my son and I shared a room. This is what these little albergues look like. I bet you can't guess which bed is his. My messy child. Anyways, so as you go along and walk through farms, lots of vineyards. Here, this vineyard, he was very happy to see that the wine was free and he could fill up his little water jug with free wine. Who knew? And, you know, I have to say the scenery was stunning. It was just breathtaking. And even this beautiful flower here, which was a weed, was gorgeous. We'd heard a lot about hostels, and I was afraid to stay in a hostel, but this was my son's last night, and we came across one. I said, well, let's try it. And this is what it looked like inside. So there was a bathroom down the hall. There were 4 beds. We could shut and lock the door. And I thought, well, it's not the Ritz-Carlton, but it's not too bad. And, you know, it was like $10 a night. So I gave my son a few things. Here, Ryan is headed back to the United States. You wouldn't believe how much makeup I brought. I never put on a stitch. By the time it was 8 o'clock at night, I was so tired I could hardly keep my eyes open. I did have my phone, but I did not have cell service because they don't have 911 in Spain. And this was 11 years ago. You could only text with Wi-Fi at the time. And I just wanted to be able to read on my phone at night. So I thought if I broke my leg or something, somebody would find me and that would be fine. Ryan takes the train from Logroño back to Madrid, and I start off solo. Of course, I forgot my hiking poles in the hotel. I started to cry. I flagged down a policeman. He took me back to the hotel. He did not take me back to where I was walking from, but I decided I would get over that. And then, like I said, I walked 24 miles my first day. Ryan was gone because I missed the signs. You can walk for 3 or 4 hours alone on these trails, or sometimes there's somebody there all the time. There's 3 or 4 people. There's 1 person. There's all kinds of different clusters. And this was the first night I opened up a letter from one of my gal pals. There's a lot of interesting things on this journey. This cross that you see in the photograph was placed here in the 11th century. It's a huge iron cross in Fontibaden, and there's a tradition that you drop a rock here. I am standing on a mountain of rocks that are probably the equivalent of a 4-story condo building. And not every, but a lot of pilgrims, you drop a rock there. So you bring a rock from home. I didn't know you were supposed to bring it from home, but I found another rock, and you write a note on it. At the time, I hated my mother-in-law. So I wrote a note to get rid of my resentments at my mother-in-law, and I dropped it. And guess what? I did come home and like her better. Not great, but it was better. So there's all kinds of opportunities for rebirth on this journey. And I dropped the rock of my resentments, if you will, at this place. So again, here's this little arrow. That's my marker. It was done in all kinds of interesting ways, with pine cones, with crosses, with whatever. This photograph of all the shoes, when you checked into a small hotel, you put your shoes there. Well, I didn't want to put my shoes there because if somebody stole my shoes, I wouldn't have any anymore. I had 1 pair of boots in my backpack, and I had 1 pair of flip-flops so my feet could air out at night. And then there were lots of great places along the way when you go through towns, all these bags and purses here. But you don't want to buy anything because weight on your back is critical. Just even food, you wouldn't want to carry more than a day's food because it's heavy. Water is heavy to carry. I'm a Diet Coke person. I don't drink coffee in the morning. But this is some entrepreneurial person on an estate out in the middle of nowhere. And would you believe it was a Diet Coke machine? You put a euro through the gate there and the cold Diet Coke drops out. I thought I died and gone to heaven. It was these very simple, silly pleasures that were some of the highlights of my trip. This is some of the places that I stayed. This is in Samos. This is a monastery built in the 6th century. They had a place for women and men separated to stay there. On the lower left here, you can see the arrow, the Camino arrow, which is made out of pine cones. There would be a family-style dinner at night if it was a place where 6 or 8 people could stay. And again, this is the laundromat. Some people just hung their clothes out there. And this is a small room with 4 beds in it, private bath. That was about $25 a night. And I found 2 women that I traveled with for about 6 days. And strangely enough, it was a mother-daughter team. The mother's name was Audrey. My mother's name is Audrey. And the daughter's name was Morgan. And my daughter's name is Morgan. And I thought, of all the people in the world I buddy up with and stay with for 6 days, because she too had shin splints. It was just one of those woo-woo things, I thought. These are just pictures of the Camino while you're walking along.
Yeah.
I'm singing to myself out loud and talking to whoever. And it was just, it's really a great respite from the hubba hubba of life. This was an albergue, which had about 8 beds in it. And the way to find these places is I had a little book. This is the book. I don't know if you can see it. And this tells me each 20 miles where I could stay. And it has names of places. And then I just buddied up to somebody. If I would hear somebody speaking Spanish, I would say, can you call this place and make a reservation for me? Or do you know anything about this? Can you read this review? My greatest fear was the dreaded bed bugs. Ick. Yeah, no. So this is my book. And every time I finished a stage, which was about 20 miles in this book, I would tear the page out. I mean, that's how conscious we were of weight. Now you can have your backpack sent on ahead of you. Where were they when I needed them? But duct tape. Duct tape was a wonderful thing to put on your feet, on your whatever that got chafed. This was one of my walking buddies. This is me on a foggy morning up top of a mountain, a lot of misty, a lot of rain. There is Audrey and Morgan, and that is their Compostela in their hand, which is what you get when you finish the journey and you go to the pilgrim's office in Santiago. I've kept in touch with them for all these years now, and when Morgan, her daughter, got married, they live in British Columbia. I was invited to their wedding. You'd be surprised at how close friends you can become when you're walking all day talking and to each other, not on the phone, not texting, just making connections. So this photo on the left, this is called the Meseta, and this is about 5 days of this. I thought I was in Kansas. I mean, it was just no trees, this kind of sandy shale-like trail. And that was, you'd run into a little village, every couple of miles for the 5 days and stay there. And then there'd be, after the village break, then it was just this trail. It was, I'd never seen anything like it. How are we doing on time? Okay. So I found a lot of joy and fun. This big house here, when Emilio Estefan and Martin Sheen and others were making the movie The Way, they filmed it from this house. I ended up at this house. I called them and they said they were full. And I thought, I'm going anyways. I don't know where else to go but to this house. And my girlfriend had a reservation. So she said you could sleep in my bed. Everybody became very friendly, as you could hear on this trip. And the funny part of it was Emilio Estevan, who is the son of Martin Sheen, fell in love with the guy that's there with a beard. He owned that estate, and his daughter was a beautiful young girl. And Emilia Estevan married his daughter, and they still have a house there to this day. So they live happily ever after, I guess. Here's some Camino statistics for you. In 2019, 347,000 people walked the Camino. And keep in mind, there are 7 different major versions. If I do this again, I would love to do the Portugal way, which I hear is stunning and alongside the water. It used to be more men did this than women. Now it's more women. People go on foot, people go on bike, people go on horseback, and some people go on wheelchair. It's a square wheelchair. As a matter of fact, David Heggie, the Australian that we met the first day in one of the first few slides, on day 5, we were still pumping into each other. And as we were crossing a creek, he fell into the creek and sprained his ankle, and he was unable to go forward again. So that was his second attempt at the Camino. But there were lots of people, beautiful young Swedish girls, 22 years old, 25, that had blisters the size of a small cantaloupe on their foot, and they went home. So here I am. I'm in Sarajevo, which is about 100 miles from Santiago, kind of in the home stretch. My daughter Morgan shows up 2 days late, lost her phone. Don't get me started, but I just knew to stay where I was and she would show up, and she did. So we had a great time. One of the reasons I didn't want to have a hotel or a forward going reservation was because you would come across places like this and I think, oh, I want to go see that. So I'd spend 3 hours exploring up there, and by that time I'm done. I don't want to go any further. So I just stay in that town. But it gave me I like to have reservations. I like to know where I'm going and what I'm doing generally, but this was a steep deviation from who I normally was, and I'm really glad I did it because everything worked out. I don't have to be in charge of everything, although I like to. This, again, is that Masada. This is my daughter. This is pouring rain. When you're my daughter, my son had a flight home, and when it's raining, you just keep walking. You don't stop because you'll get too far behind schedule. So all the rain gear, and this is a setting at a small private home, and I would just stand up in my seat and go, "Hi, everybody. My name is Kathleen. I'm from Washington, D.C. This is where I started my journey. And I'm going all the way to Santiago." And then the next person would get up and he would say, "Hi, I'm Hans. I'm from Germany," and where he started. And it was just really a great way to travel. So here we are. We're finally at Santiago. This is the incredible cathedral, which is the home stretch. It is beautiful. And one of the best known symbols of this cathedral is this Budamafiro here. Please forgive my terrible Spanish or whatever language I'm butchering. But see this thing in front of these 2 priests here? This thing sways back and forth. It takes 3 men to make it swing. It's full of incense. And at that time, they had this mass at noon. And it was so incredible to see people I hadn't seen in 4 weeks, and all of a sudden they show up in this church. It's the noon mass. They made it. And I was crying. It was just a kind of an overwhelming emotional thing to finally be there. And I'm not very Catholic, but it was a impressive ceremony, and it was just great to see everybody. Standing room only. People were standing on pews. People were standing everywhere. And this is where the pilgrim's office is, where you check in. And this is also where, in the Middle Ages, where people went. And the reason they did that incense was because the body odors, and it was a breeding ground for epidemic back then. But they still do that ceremony thing. And then some of the other facts for the pilgrimage is that, lots of people die on this trail. They either die from natural causes, a heart attack, or I don't hear of any crime on this journey. Everybody seems to be willing to help each other. You sit down on a rock somewhere and have your lunch. Somebody else will come sit down beside you and share their lunch with you. So this is in Santiago, is where you go to the pilgrim office, you show them your passport, and they interview you and ask you questions. I don't remember what the questions were, but somehow I passed and I got my Compostela. It was very inexpensive for me to do it this way. It's probably, I don't know, maybe $5,000-$6,000, but that's also because I paid for my children. I paid for, stuff for them. But the average place was, $25 10 years ago. There's a pilgrim dinner in every town. There still is. That's about $20. I always thought, I don't know, it's probably a dating site. Maybe there should be matchcamino.com, because there's a lot of people and a lot of men walking that trail. This is the cathedral in Santiago, which is stunning, beautiful architecture. It's been being refurbished for the last 6 years, and it's finished. This was another article that was written about my journey, mostly because I had broken my back, and this was a pretty significant accomplishment. And my back, honestly, never felt better. I think all that walking exercised and strengthened the muscles that were holding my spine in place. Last but not least, my pearls of wisdom were basically what I learned on this journey was to trust in the universe, or whatever higher power you believe in. You can't change what happened, but I could change my attitude. My broken back initially was the worst thing that had ever happened to me in my life. And I really thought I would never be able to be physical again. But luckily, they were wrong. And thanks to the grace of whomever, I would have never had this incredible experience, 35 days of walking, if I hadn't broken my back. So you don't have to break your back. You could go on it just for a week if you wanted and have a great time. It also gave me 100 miles with each of my children as adults, which was a rare pleasure. I learned, my kids went to Whitman High School. I learned more naughty stories. I even learned that my son had been arrested, which of course I did not know about. Now that they're living on their own, and it was safe to tell me about all their naughty deeds, I got an earful, but we got really close. And that started a new family tradition from this journey forward. And every year since, we have gone on a hiking trip that's at least 100 miles usually, in Ireland, in Machu Picchu, where we walk hut to hut, and outfitters carry my backpack. But every year we've gone, and I wouldn't change that for the world. I'm starting to get a little old for this stuff, but I still love it. And last year we went hiking in the desert in Amman, Jordan, for a week. And again, place to stay, hike 8 to 10 miles in the middle. that's it for this one. My next one is online dating after 60, and that is May 21st. These are some of my other antics: Mount Kilimanjaro, the Beta Breakers race. This Beta Breakers race has over 20,000 people. And would you believe almost 10,000 of them are naked? I never saw anything like it in my life. I was laughing so hard, I did terrible time because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, only in San Francisco. And that's it. Thank you.
No, well, thank
And I see a raised hand from Sarah. Can you unmute? Oh,
Kathleen.
There we go. I'm on a new computer and I'm not doing very well on it. Well, I can say that I can't compete with what you did, but I have done the Portugal Camino,
oh,
starting in Porto and getting all the way to Santiago. And I think it was about 150 miles, and we did it in basically 14 days.
wow, that's pushing
We
it.
did not have reservations. We stayed in public uh, places and public, what do I want to say, hostels, as
Yes.
well, and private ones also. But we also stayed in one of those grand old houses that have been turned into hotels. I agree with you about the people you meet. It's wonderful. It's a real plus to meet people from all over the world, and some of them you talk to for a half an hour, and some of them, as you say, for 3 days.
Yeah.
And gathering at the end of each day at some pub where everybody can sort of share their stories. I love the villages. It wasn't all. I don't think it was as hard as what yours is. We only had a couple of days that were really difficult. The wonderful memories of the days with rain, which made life harder, but somehow ended in something special. The coffee was great, or we were greeted by a family that gave us lunch, or whatever. I mean, it was great. Now, I don't know exactly how long ago, but I'm 83, and it's got to be less than 10 years ago. So I was a lot older than you were. And we did have our backpacks moved from one place to the next. So we weren't carrying really heavy stuff. And since then, we tried, it's basically the same people, some of whom have done much more of this than I have. The Camino di Dante in Italy. And then last year, I did the Cotswolds with one of these women.
Uh-huh.
So I continued, and at my age, there are not too many left that I can do, but it's wonderful, and I didn't start. I mean, I wasn't an athlete like you. I wasn't running. I wasn't. Well, I've done scuba diving, but not in a long time. But I think it's never too late. Is I guess what my message would be.
That's a great one, Sarah. Congratulations.
Well, I also did the Camino. I did 5 days on the Camino de Santiago, got the Campistello. Here's my,
Yay!
and we did about 15 miles a day. And if you do 100, or it's 100 kilometers, and you do get the Campistello, and it was just amazing and spiritual. And we also did 5 days on the Portuguese route, on the coastal route, but we didn't go to Santiago because we had already done that. We had a different end point in Porto Aguarda. But it is the people you meet, as Sarah pointed out, and as you pointed out, the people you meet, the memories, but it is truly the French route was truly a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
And it's just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah, I believe that, there were people in their 70s walking, 80s. They may walk a little slower, but and you can do 5 or 6 miles a day if that's all you want to do. I was, I was going 12 and a half miles a day was like a comfortable pace after my first week. First
I
week
agree.
was a bear.
Yeah, on average, we did about 15. But congratulations to all.
Yes. Marge, are you ready to hike that one next?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about it. Anyway, Sandy, does anybody else have any questions or any comments for Kathleen? Everybody good? Okay, well, I would like to personally thank you very much from all of us. I feel like I'm sweating from this whole experience, but it was wonderful. And from the salon, we'd like to thank you. And I have for you a gift card from American Plant Food so that you can now start your balcony garden.
Oh, how fabulous. Well, that was totally unnecessary, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate having the opportunity to sort of relive those moments. It's a great memory. And I hope you all try it one day. Sue, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do, because I just thought of a question that I didn't think of before. Does anybody ever walk with a rollator or with a cane or with any sort of a walking assistant?
Yes.
They do what, wheelchairs and stuff?
Yeah, well, you know what they had was like a tripod. They had the guy sitting in front, and then it was the arms came out like this, and it was on wheels. And
Oh, you mean like let's say what do they use? They push children in these things that are three that are
it's three, yeah,
triangular?
it's a wheel in the front
Yeah.
and 2 wheels in the back, and it's skinny
Yeah.
and it's agile. But I have a friend of the family whose son is handicapped, and
Yeah.
he did it. There's also a movie about a guy and his best friend who had a significant injury, and he pushed him the entire Camino. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of really uplifting stories
so that
surrounded
it's
around this
flat
journey.
enough and you can still manage to I mean, you don't have to climb over things.
It's also true that because there are so many people there, they're quite ready to help other people who have some sort of challenge. I mean, they're almost teams that develop in the process. There was somebody when I was doing it, I think it was in a wheelchair, and they had 4 or 5 people that stuck with them for a long time, maybe the whole thing. And they weren't people who came with the person. They just gathered. It's part of the spirit of Camino, of helping other people.
Yeah, I've never
Thank you.
found anything like it anywhere else that was quite this I don't know, the camaraderie, the spirit of goodwill, the here have half my sandwich. It was pretty special.
Thank you.
So thank you all. Marge, thank you for asking me again. And I do see a couple of my neighbors there. Cookie, I don't know where Judy went, Judy Can, and Barbara. Great to see everybody. Thank you for listening.
Buen
Thank
Camino.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, I'm signing you all off.